And at 10, New Earth. Now, I'd like to say that technically New Earth is no longer the main continuity, since Prime Earth currently is, so I'm allowing New Earth Oliver to be on this list, okay? My list, my rules. New Earth Oliver is pretty badass, since in the 0 Hour storyline, after being thrust into another timeline where he stares at his own dead body, he gets pulled back and recruited by Batman to help in the fight against his once good friend Hal Jordan, who had recently gone mad thanks to Coast City being destroyed and then being possessed by Parallax. Oliver didn't want to believe it, but after seeing what Hal had become, he knew what he had to do. In the final battle, Oliver straight up shot Parallax in the chest, ending the battle and saving the universe. But Oliver was pretty messed up after this, understandably, because you know, he just killed his best friend. So Ollie returned to where he committed his first murder, because you know, that's great for your mental health, and swore off being a superhero. But obviously, this wouldn't stick. Still pretty sick though. And at 9, Archer. Appearing in the animated movie Justice League Crisis on Two Earths, this version of Oliver Queen is the evil version who's a member of the crime syndicate. While he doesn't have much else going for him, being a match for the main Earth Oliver, he does have the moral advantage. You see, when you don't have a moral code, you can basically do anything, and that's what Archer experiences in this movie, even attempting to assassinate President Slade Wilson's daughter during a public speech. Yeah, it's pretty messed up. Dressing in red so he can hide all the blood, this guy is willing to kill whoever he has to in order to survive, gain more power, or even just have a bit of fun. And that puts him at an advantage over good Oliver, because he could easily put someone's life in danger as a distraction and it would work. If you're enjoying this list and want to see more like it, why don't you hit those shiny like and subscribe buttons? It really helps us out and can make a huge difference. Okay, let's keep going. In at 8, Injustice. While the Dictator Superman universe version of Green Arrow dies brutally after accidentally shooting John Kent, the Earth 1 version of Green Arrow ends up being summoned by the Evilverse Batman to take down the crazy Superman. But in this reality, there is a pill that the Joker calls the Happy Pill, at least in the game, that increases their resistance to attacks, luckily making it slightly harder for Superman to kill this version of Oliver Queen. This pill does make him more powerful than his original and Archer counterparts, so that's why he's on this list, especially because everyone on Evil Man Earth is like, oh damn, Oliver Queen is back? How did that happen? I mean, like, it's pretty normal for Oliver, I guess. He's basically at this point one of DC's Jesuses, but still, I'm sure that made at least some people question Superman's true power, but it probably didn't last for long, because if it did, they would get their heads blown off or like heat vision through their skull. Do you think Superman plays golf with human heads? I'd like to think so. 4. And at 7, Goliath. Goliath is the Amalgam Universe version of Oliver Queen and Goliath. While not really an archer, Goliath does have the Marvel Universe's Goliath powers, including the ability to grow and shrink. What makes him part Oliver Queen is his relationship to Canary, which parallels to Goliath and Mockingbird's relationship in the Marvel Universe. First introduced in JLX number 1 in 1996, I'm sure you can see why Goliath would be a powerful version of Green Arrow. Actually, while learning about this character, I decided to move him up quite a bit, because being able to grow or shrink at will instead of needing to wear a suit like Ant-Man is certainly a power that is scary to deal with, especially with the basic invulnerability that he has thanks to Goliath. The only thing that really makes him Oliver Queen though is his name and his relationship to Canary, so that's why he's higher up on the list. And at 6, Roy Harper. Now, while Roy Harper may be younger and more naive than Oliver Queen, he does become quite the respectable superhero in his own right, and has gotten through some serious issues, including multiple substance abuse issues, which is inspirational to say the least. While also being an expert archer, Roy is an excellent acrobat and has been shown as an expert mechanic and engineer, designing and building his own trick arrows as well as trick arrows for Oliver, not to mention additional weapons, robots, and defense systems. He's also been shown as quite the expert hacker, and was able to jailbreak his phone and give it voice recognition. Roy Harper invented Siri, guys. Aside from that, the Arrowverse version of Roy was also given a dose of Mirakuru and survived, turning him into a living weapon much like Slade Wilson. While the Mirakuru was in his system, Roy was able to punch through a shipping container that was bullet and explosion proof, not to mention the healing factor he gained, and the ability to punch through brick without, ironically, breaking a sweat. Although this came with its own set of issues, including anger management problems, which isn't good when your mentor has just sworn off killing. Not to mention the one time Roy in the comics had a Black Lantern ring in the Blackest Night storyline. Halfway through, and at number 5, Flashpoint. Flashpoint Oliver is an interesting case here, because while he is on the side of good, he's more on the side of profit. Leading a band of ex-military operatives he calls the Green Arrows, Oliver runs a business where he steals advanced gadgets and weapons from villains and refurbishes them for military use, which honestly makes him pretty damn powerful. If he can not only acquire these weapons, but also if he used them, he could be considered one of the most powerful non-superpowered individuals in the Flashpoint timeline. But I also like to consider the fact that just because Barry's mom didn't die, Oliver isn't as much much of a do-gooder as he is in the main timeline, or that just because Barry's mom didn't die, Bruce Wayne is the one who dies in the alley. It's incredible to me, honestly. This version of Green Arrow was introduced in Flashpoint Green Arrow Industries #1 in 2011, and this one is definitely on my read list. I'm probably gonna pull it up when I get home because this is really cool, even if it is slightly concerning. And at 4, Connor Hawke. Connor Hawke is the son of Green Arrow and Sandra Hawke, and takes over the Green Arrow mantle after his father's death. When introduced in Green Arrow Volume 2 #0 in 1994, he appeared to just be a huge fan of the Green Arrow, but it was later revealed that, unbeknownst to Oliver, Connor was in fact his son. It feels fitting that it's my name now, honestly. And while he may share the same skills as his father, although less evolved, Connor does end up gaining a couple powers over his father, one of them being a healing factor, granted to him due to genetic mutations from Dr. Sivana, this giving him also a higher resistance to pain. This also allows him to stay at his prime with ease, much like Logan, and thanks to Connor's Zen training, he was able to develop a form of clairvoyance. This is the ability that gave him a vision of his father still alive, despite the world thinking that he was dead. See, he has a reason to be on this list other than us just sharing names, okay? Getting close to the end, and at #3, Blackest Night. The Black Lantern Corps is a group of various dead superheroes and villains alike who are raised by Nekron and each given a Black Lantern ring. This ring grants them power over death, and these rings are powered by the Anti-Monitor, as he is present within the Black Lantern power battery. Those raised by the Black Lantern ring are in essence resurrected to where they were before, but with their minds warped to serve Nekron's purpose. Those with the ring have various powers, including a healing factor, aura recognition which allows them to see powerful emotions, energy spectrum assimilation which lets them extract the hearts of individuals they've slain and use their last feelings to charge the central battery and their ring by 0.01%, and they, much like zombies, can infect others by biting them. A bite from a Black Lantern will slowly kill the one bitten and would turn them into a Black Lantern upon death. Basically zombies with superpowers, so definitely not something to be laughing at. Penultimately, in at #2, the Spectre. While I really wanted to put this at #1, I knew at least a few of you would be mad at me for it, so here we are at #2. The Arrowverse crossover event Crisis on Infinite Earths had been in the process of being set up for a while, with the previous Elseworlds crossover basically just being one big commercial for it, and the seasons of the shows leading up to it mostly revolved around what would happen. One of these main issues was Oliver Queen's death, which shockingly was carried out in the first part of the crossover. After bringing Oliver Queen back to life with a Lazarus Pit on Earth 19, John Diggle, his daughter from the future Mia, and Constantine all travel to Purgatory to retrieve his soul. But when he was about to go back with them, Jim Corrigan arrives with a way for Oliver to save everyone. This turns Oliver into the Spectre, basically the most powerful being in the multiverse, or one of them at least, giving him the powers of God, allowing Oliver to reboot the universe with the help of the Paragons, and stopping the Anti-Monitor from securing the death of all Earths. He also ended up corrupting the Speed Force by empowering Barry, which resulted in the Speed Force dying for a time. This really should be #1, but whatever. Finally, in at #1, Brightest Day. After Hal Jordan absorbed the entity of life, he spread its power over multiple superheroes, some of who were Black Lanterns at the time. This included the Green Arrow, which fully resurrected him. And a white power ring is certainly the most powerful ring of them all. One ring to rule them all. Being able to generate and use any color from the spectrum, since white light is all the other colors combined. This allows White Lanterns to in essence have near godlike abilities with all the colors. White energy blasts, force field generation, energy constructs, energy twins, ring duplication, mind alteration, wormhole generation, time travel, invisibility, resurrection, you name it and the White Lanterns can do it. The full extent of the white power ring is unknown, so honestly, this is the only thing I saw fit to beat the Spectre if anything. I mean, the white power ring may not be able to reboot the universe, but hey, we don't know if it could. It can resurrect people, so why not resurrect planets, right? I mean, probably. Hopefully that's not too big of a leap in logic.
Number 10, Agent 13. While Sharon Carter might just be your average run-of-the-mill human on paper, in reality she is anything but your run-of-the-mill human when it comes to her capabilities. When the Secret Avengers team was brought together following the disbanding of Norman Osborn's Dark Avengers and Hammer, Captain America decided not to resurrect S.H.I.E.L.D., but instead create his own sub-Avengers teams to help keep the world safe. One of these teams was the Secret Avengers, and Sharon Carter was entrusted to be his kind of co-captain for it. Sharon Carter is Agent 13. Sharon was inspired to become an agent by tales that her Aunt Peggy Carter told her of her own heroics, as well as Captain America's. She joined S.H.I.E.L.D. and is considered to be among one of their best agents, being an expert in hand-to-hand combat as well as firearms. More importantly, Sharon is also a great tactician, strategist, and leader. Number 9, Goliath. Despite the fact that he died on the team, Goliath was still a powerful member. Goliath is Bill Foster, who used to work with Dr. Hank Pym as his assistant. Being a brilliant scientist himself, Foster was able to duplicate the formula for Pym particles. Exposing himself to Pym particles, he was given the ability to alter his size, turning himself into a giant. Well, at will. He could turn himself into a giant and then shrink back down. Hence the name Goliath. Safely, Foster could grow to 25 feet in height. His increase in size also gave him a great increase in strength and somewhat in durability due to his change in mass. The formula also allows his body to change so that it can actually support the weight of his new and larger form while he is transformed. However, Goliath was vulnerable if he changed sizes multiple times in a shorter period, as it left him weakened somewhat and exhausted temporarily. It's hard on the body, basically. He died during his time serving on the Secret Avengers during the first Civil War, which was actually the first Secret Avengers team, but not the first volume of Secret Avengers, to be clear. To some, his death only strengthened their conviction for the cause, and to others, it acted as a warning to basically leave the team. And gave them a signal that actually what they were doing maybe it wasn't a good idea. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want to learn more about other sub-Avengers teams or more about the Secret Avengers, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. There's still lots of powerful members that I haven't talked about yet, so we could probably do a part 2 for this one. Number 8. Ant-Man. Ant-Man for the purpose of this list is actually Eric O'Grady, not Hank Pym or Scott Lang. During the Secret Avengers run that Ant-Man was a part of, the mantle was being held by Eric. If you thought Scott's past and thieving actions were questionable, Eric basically puts him to shame. Eric is probably the baddest of the Ant-Men in terms of his morals, although I think all Ant-Men have made some morally questionable choices in their life. Still, O'Grady really takes the cake overall. Eric O'Grady is more commonly known as the Irredeemable Ant-Man, which was the name of his Ant-Man series, which really gives you an idea of what type of character he is. However, Eric had decided to turn over a new leaf and really try to make a difference in the world and become a hero, which was what motivated him to accept a position on the Secret Avengers team. Although, to be clear, up to this point he was still a hero, he just was kind of like a very morally corrupt hero. He possesses the Ant-Man suit, which gives him his powers, allowing him to change size, shrinking down, and later growing in size as well. He can also communicate with and command insects. Can also, I think, do some cool energy blasty stuff. So he's pretty powerful. But still, it's Eric O'Grady. It's not like Hank Ant-Man. I think those are two different levels. Number 7. Beast. Beast is Hank McCoy, one of the original members of the X-Men and also one of the brainiest members of the Secret Avengers. He ends up being recruited for his brilliant mind, but there is a lot that Beast brings to the table when it comes to his skill and his power set. In the comics, it's also been established that he is incredibly, impossibly agile and dexterous. He also possesses superhuman strength, endurance, and durability. He has a healing factor which allows him to recover more quickly than most from injuries, and also slows his aging. His senses are heightened, and he has strong telepathic defenses, which can protect him against even some of the strongest psionics in the world of Marvel. He also has a few unique powers, such as his ability to be aware of the time stream, which makes him more aware if something is altered or otherwise out of place within it. He's also believed to have some level of pheromone powers. In other words, you really shouldn't underestimate Beast. I don't say it enough, but he truly is a beast of a superhero who brings a lot to the table. I'm happy I was able to put him on this list. Do you agree that Hank should be above Ant-Man? I don't know, but I think he deserves it, you know? Not enough appreciation for Hank McCoy. Number 6. Moon Knight. Moon Knight was considered a questionable recruit to the post-Dark Reign Secret Avengers team the Cap brought together, and yet he still makes a lot of sense when you consider just how dangerous and how capable he is. Moon Knight might live with a dissociative identity disorder, but this often doesn't get in his way of completing whatever mission he is on in his own heroic life, nor does it often affect his ability to be a hero. Still, the other heroes on the team did personally question if Moon Knight was the right fit and the right pick. Moon Knight has access to amazing weapons and tech thanks to being outfitted by Stephen Grant, another prominent persona that resides in Mark Spector's psyche, who is a millionaire. He also has tons of intel, which is provided to him through one of his other personas, Jake Lockley, who's a cab driver. When it comes to his power set, he is an incredibly skilled fighter who has the favor of a god, the moon god Khonshu, on his side, and this also makes him hard to kill because usually Khonshu will just bring him back to life. He's also got enhanced strength, endurance, and agility at night, especially if it's a full moon. Moon power, baby! Get that moon power. Number 5. War Machine. War Machine is James Rhodes, who gets his powers from his Iron Man made armor. Donning this armor, he goes by the mantle of War Machine typically, but has also been known to wear the Iron Patriot armor and also use that moniker as well. In fact, during his time on the Secret Avengers team, Rhodey's War Machine armor received an upgrade that allowed him to phase and appear invisible, but he would actually give up the War Machine mantle to later become Iron Man in secret, and then end up later leaving the Secret Avengers team when he decided to take up the Iron Patriot armor and that name. Rhodey might get his powers from his suit, but the skills and knowledge which he uses to pilot them is all his own. So even without his armor, he's pretty powerful. I mean, he's a guy, but he's still a powerful guy. Also, he has lots of suits, so he also powerful in his suits. His suits of armor. Number 4. Black Widow. Black Widow makes for a great addition to Captain America's Secret Avengers team that is formed following the end of Norman Osborn's Dark Reign. This team was one that Captain America brought together to basically serve as his Black Ops team. Their main mission was to help clean up all the messes that Norman Osborn had left about during his time ruling Hammer and the Dark Avengers. Considering that Natasha is a highly skilled and trained assassin who also has extensively reflected on the moral dilemma that comes attached to things like assassinating people and Black Ops, she makes a great fit. She is extremely experienced with walking that fine line between getting less savory jobs done, but also making sure you don't lose yourself and that you only do as much as is really necessary. Not only is she highly trained and skilled, but it's also implied that she technically has superpowers after being exposed to a Russian variation of the super soldier serum during her time in the Red Room. It's how she can stay so youthful and she looks so young forever. That Russian super soldier serum. Making sense of how is Black Widow even still alive and what is going on. Number 3. Valkyrie. Brunhilde is Valkyrie, or at least she was Valkyrie. Now there's another Valkyrie, and actually there's kind of like other Valkyries, multiple Valkyries, but I digress. Brunhilde is also Valkyrie in the comics. She ended up joining the Secret Avengers after her apparent death during the Fear Itself event. As a character, she dies quite a bit to be honest, but she usually gets to return, which is awesome. As an Asgardian, Brunhilde has powers that come from just being of Asgard. She has superhuman strength, speed, durability, reflexes, has slowed aging and an increased lifespan, and of course she can self-heal. Although as I said, that doesn't always save her from dying, which happens. Number 2. Captain America. Probably one of the most important members of the Secret Avengers team at almost all times is Captain America. Captain America was the founder of the team the first time around and formed it to help fight back against Iron Man and the Superhuman Registration Act during Civil War. It was called Secret Avengers because of the fact that the team had to be kept secret. Otherwise they would have been taken away and imprisoned due to the SRA or the SHRA. I don't know if superhuman, if those are their own letters or not. Captain America is a super soldier, a strong and motivational leader who also has super strength, speed, agility, speed, I said speed twice, but he's really speedy, I guess, and endurance, all thanks to him being exposed to the super soldier serum years ago in World War II. So he's not just super valuable as a leader, but he's also super powerful in general. Also, he's Captain freaking America. That's just having that name. I feel like if you're Captain America already, you get some kind of power level just from people being like, oh, it's Captain America. Number 1. Nova. Nova is Richard Rider. He basically came on to act as a Secret Avengers powerhouse when Captain America originally banded this team together after Hammer was disbanded, which I think means he gets our top spot by default. Also, Nova is just insanely powerful due to him being the host of the Nova Force. He only ended up sticking around for the first arc of the first Secret Avengers series volume, as he had to go do some cosmic stuff and he was pulled away, but he was still a member for a time, so we can still count him. Nova is insanely strong, fast, durable, can self-heal, can fly, also having the ability to fly through space, and he's super smart, as he has access to the Xandarian world mind, basically giving him access to all the knowledge of Xandar. So yeah, he's got it all, baby. He's got the strength, he's got the wits, he's got that sweet look in his awesome suit with his awesome helmet. He's got it all. Except he doesn't have the time to be on the Secret Avengers for too long. That's what he doesn't have. He lacks time. Number 10. Troll. The series Youngblood from Image Comics is definitely trolling us with this one. Youngblood is a series about a government-run and endorsed team of superheroes. It explores the idea of a world where superheroes garner celebrity-like status, similar to the series The Boys and X-Statix. The team even includes Vogue, a Russian model who later uses her fame to create a makeup line. Troll is a member who is beast-like in appearance, covered in muscles. Upon seeing him in his true form, one would immediately be forced to call to mind Beast from Marvel's X-Men crew. Because get this, Troll normally is covered in blue fur. Yeah. Though admittedly, he is often seen without it as he shaves his entire body to appear more human. As his name suggests, an actual troll. While also agile and physically strong like Beast, he does not appear to hold the same level of intelligence. Though he once wielded a terrifying weapon, a book that could be used to rewrite one's own history and can tell the future, he lost it in a card game. Wah wah. Someone smaller but just as fierce as the Beast, but with less intellect, sounds pretty scary and dangerous to me. Number 9. House of X and Powers of X. These two new comic series retcon and relaunch X-Men history, and although they operate within the world of Marvel and the world of X-Men themselves, I feel as though they are important to mention. When we talk about comics inspiring people, it is important that we also recognize some of those who were inspired are fortunate enough to do the writing and illustration within the realm of the world that inspired them. How cool is that? When we turn to these new Marvel series, we see at the writing helm Jonathan Hickman, who has brought us a much more daring story when it comes to the familiar motley crew that is the mutant heroes. In fact, he has even reintroduced some heroes that we may have forgotten. The time in which mutants fight for their rights, freedoms, and even for isolation on Krakoa is painted as much more desperate and bleak. Part of this is the beautiful artwork and colors created in combination by R.B. Silva, Pepe Larraz, and Marta Gracia. The writing built up the high stakes, and if you want to feel that tension and see how ruthless these mutants can get, check out House of X's issue number 2. Number 8. Steeljack. Astro City has changed publishers so many times, I'd rather not list them all. Instead, I'll just say the series is currently listed as belonging to Vertigo Comics. More of a concrete jungle vibe, in this series we have different factions or gangs of heroes in the city. The most similar one to the X-Men being the Astro City Irregulars. Among the characters of the series we find Steeljack, a wannabe superhero who acquired the power of metal skin. Sound familiar? Steeljack is like a permanent metal version of Colossus. Originally, this character was actually a villain in the series. I don't know about you, but I would not want to deal with a villainous version of Colossus in any form. Number 7. Sarah Rainmaker. Coming to us from Wildstorm Comics, now owned by DC, is a Storm-inspired hero. Let's spread some of that Storm love. In the Gen 13 series, Sarah Rainmaker is introduced as one of a group of Gen active teens, think mutants, who are invited to participate in government testing. The group is kept in a prison-like testing facility before they escape. Sounds like some creepy X-Men gone wrong scenario where they get successfully rounded up by the government. Sarah Rainmaker's abilities allow her to control weather, only so far as air and water, though she can also fly and create lightning. So we're looking at a character who isn't quite on Storm's power level, but definitely has similar abilities. Other interesting facts are that Sarah Rainmaker identifies as a lesbian, and that her character was originally introduced as a member of the Native American Apache tribe. Number 6. Allison Hargreaves. Coming to us from Dark Horse's Umbrella Academy comic series, which now also has a Netflix show, we have Allison Hargreaves, also known as the Rumor. This story is definitely a much stranger and darker one than X-Men, in terms of the moods and vibes, and was written and created by Gerard Way, lead singer of My Chemical Romance. This connection is a little more loose than some of the others, especially if we are looking for a huge correlation in appearance. However, when it comes to powers and personality, the connection is a strong one, as Allison resembles that of another famed X-Men and Avenger, and one of my favorite superheroes, Scarlet Witch. That is to say, Allison's powers are that she can alter reality, not using chaos magic per se, but by using the phrase, "I heard a rumor." Anything spoken after those words by her that is untrue ultimately becomes true. Scarlet Witch has also famously spoken aloud some of her changes to reality, only to have them come true. Though her wishes are not as connected to the need to speak as Allison's are. Beyond that, Allison is also prone to fits of hysteria and emotional outbursts, echoing that of Wanda's struggle with her emotions and her mental health. Number 5. Toyo Harada. One could compare Toyo Harada of Valiant Comics' Harbinger series to Professor Charles Xavier, save that he is evil. Toyo is one of the most powerful psionics in the world. Again, psionics are kinda like mutants. His powers echo that of Professor X, namely that he is an insanely powerful telepath who also has the ability to control minds, but who also possesses the powers of telekinesis. His goal is to recruit others with superpowers and take over the world so that he can protect it and guide humans into the next step towards their evolution. Yeah, spooky. Number 4. Ripclaw. A combination of Warpath and Wolverine, Ripclaw comes to us from Image Comics' Cyberforce team and series. His origin story resembles a horror story and echoes some of Wolverine's origins, which, let's be honest, all of Wolverine's origin story are pretty much terrifying in and of themselves. Namely, when Ripclaw's mystical Apache powers garnered him some attention from the Cyberdata Corporation, they used him to do their bidding as their agent, after brainwashing him and giving him cybernetic enhancements. Ripclaw is also a member of the Native American Apache tribe, like X-Men's Warpath, and oddly enough, also like our number 7, Sarah Rainmaker. He was granted mystic abilities by the spirits of his ancestors to take on animal-like abilities, similar but different than Warpath's Apache shaman spirit abilities, which he used to defeat the Demon Bear. His long black hair and red accents on his outfit also leave him looking similar to Warpath. Number 3. Silver Banshee. What happens when DC maybe gets a little inspiration from Marvel's X-Men member Banshee? We get Silver Banshee, who I actually think is an even cooler character. These two characters are similar in name and abilities only though. Both have supersonic deafening abilities, though Banshee tends to operate on the lower frequency, while Silver Banshee is perceived as operating on a higher frequency. And her sonic death cry is more deadly. If she can see you and knows your name and you hear her, you are dead. Though their names are also quite similar, Silver Banshee is known for being a villain in the DC world, where Banshee, though controlled by villains before, is usually a good guy. While Banshee is also male, while Silver Banshee is female, he did have a daughter who also had similar powers, who went by the name of Siren, before taking up her father's old mantle, Banshee. Though she has never explicitly been an X-Men member, she was one of the original X-Force members. Number 2. Cyblade. Also coming to us from the Cyberforce crew, we have Cyblade, who looks very similar to X-Men's Psylocke. Although Cyblade's powers are described as being electromagnetic, while Psylocke's are described as being telekinetic, the fact remains that both can use their powers to create weapons, with which they use to fight. While Cyblade is known for her electromagnetic daggers, Psylocke is more famously known for her telekinetic katana, among other weapons. And if you don't think there is some kind of crazy connection between these two heroes, then just look at them side by side. I mean, it's hard to ignore the visual similarities here. And while Psylocke's origin story is pretty frightening, I mean, so is Cyblade's, so ugh. Number 1. Lobo. Lobo actually comes to us from DC, and is stated as being created in an attempt to poke fun at violent and gritty heroes, like Wolverine. What? So there you go. One could argue that he is an even more violent rendition of Logan, as Lobo was also inspired by Marvel's Punisher. He is fond of cigars just like Wolverine and shares some abilities, namely that he is known for being super durable and possesses accelerating healing abilities. He also has a heightened sense of smell, which he often uses as a bounty hunter to help track his bounties. Oddly enough, Image and Marvel have even created parodies of him? A parody of a parody. Wow. Go figure.
Kicking off the list at number 10, The Nail. Created by Alan Davis, this version of Superman is Amish. Hot start, that's right. After he survived the destruction of Krypton, baby Kal-El was then sent to Earth in order to survive. The origin story for Superman gets a little strange when Martha and John Kent got a flat tire before departing for Smallville that day. Hence the name The Nail. Now we're putting it together. There we go. So the Lovebirds end up staying in for the night. Martha says she's in the mood just to stay home, and John agrees. So now instead the super infant was found by an Amish couple. Now he's raised a good lad, but he's disconnected from the world. He's churning butter, not checking Twitter. He has no clue he's a Kryptonian. So in turn, we get to see a Justice League with no Superman, and the world is a hot mess. Lex salvaged Kal-El's spaceship after he landed, so he used that tech to create an evil version of Jimmy Olsen. But when Super Jimmy is fighting the Justice League, the fight moves to Amish Kal-El's backyard, and that's when he discovers his true powers. He always had a feeling he was superpowered, he just didn't really know. So he bids farewell to his Amish folks, and then he unleashes the power of a god. What a day. Number 9. Injustice Superman. This comic run began back in 2013. Injustice Gods Among Us issue 1, brought to us from the minds of Tom Taylor and Jeremy Rappak, comes this dark alternate reality where Lois Lane was kidnapped by the Joker. So he goes on this hunt with the help of the Justice League, tearing submarines apart, looking for his love, but as issue 4 begins, so do the streams of our tears. Lois Lane gets killed, and in turn, Superman goes bat insane. He couldn't even stick around. He gave the body to Wonder Woman and then shoom, he just flew off. Green Lantern tried to talk to him a little bit, saying, you know, you're hurt, you're angry, yada yada yada, just slow down. But Superman wasn't having it. He had something better on his mind. Batman's face says it all during this scene. Superman tells Batman during his dark ruling days that he learned the idea of enforcing peace through fear from Batman himself. I see no lie here. And before we continue on with this list, if you want to go ahead and give this video a thumbs up, that would be super helpful for us at Top 10 Nerd. You guys are the best. Thank you so much for your support. Now let's not waste any time and get you right back into this list. Number 8, Kingdom Come Superman. Shifting over to an alternate reality with an older Justice League, this Superman isn't as ruthless, but take that with a grain of salt. Kal-El of Earth 22 made his first punch into DC Comics with Kingdom Come issue 1. Now this is a version where Lois Lane still did perish, only before her untimely demise she made Superman promise to her that he would not kill the Joker in retaliation, so a little bit different this time. So he followed through and simply had the clown arrested. But this new superhero named Magog made their debut, and then they in turn ended up killing the Joker. Magog was obviously put on trial because, you know, killing's bad and all that stuff, but he was acquitted. The general public was like, oh, the Joker? Yeah, that guy was horrible. Thanks, great work. I could take the bus without having a panic attack now. Lovely, sounds wonderful, keep it up. Superman had to then rethink a lot after this. I mean, the public is now okay with killing villains. What does this world even come to? He's been letting these guys live, and in turn they've broken free over and over again, and then continued killing innocents over and over again. So he then just disappears to the Fortress of Solitude for a bit, observing without intervening. Now he did return less than a decade later, but the world had fallen into a societal depression. So with a new suit, older Clark Kent returned to the League, ready to once again enforce a code of ethics. Number 7, Calvin Ellis. When a comic book hints at a past president of the United States, it's usually pretty comical. For example, in Harley Quinn and her Gang of Harleys issue 5, we meet Harley Sin, and her father looks and acts a little bit like Donald Trump. It's a ride. Now Calvin Ellis, on the other hand, was written by Grant Morrison to be based off Barack Obama and Muhammad Ali. So a much better person and role model, I'd say, just right off the bat. Earth 23 Superman President Ellis made his first appearance in DC Comics with Final Crisis issue 7. Kal-El was raised by the Ellis family, teaching him to always stand up for himself no matter what, and to fight for what he believes in no matter what bullies stand in your way. A little more optimistic and useful than the Amish family, I'd say, just a tad. Can I churn butter? Or can I like save people? No? Just churning butter? Alright, great. Number 6, Ultraman. Coming from Earth 3, originally Earth 2 in the comics, Ultraman is the evil version of Superman. Always fun, even if it's dark. Appropriately named Clark Luthor, he gets more power the more kryptonite he's exposed to. So if you see him dipping some crystals and licking them, you know, you gotta hit the deck. And the design is pretty much the same, only instead of a hopeful S on his chest, Ultraman rocks a U. The angrier Ultraman gets, the stronger he also gets. So usually a play on opposites are fun in comics. This one's just borderline terrifying. Number 5, Red Sun Superman. Superman Red Sun was released in 2003 from the mind of Mark Miller, part of the Elseworlds imprint. And we ask, what if Superman had been raised in the Soviet Union? I just watched Black Widow, we saw like a Russian Captain America, great stuff. Now we're talking about Russian Superman. That's why we're here, folks, let's do it. The ship lands on a Ukrainian collective farm instead of Texas, and this idea had been floating around in Miller's mind since he was a 6-year-old. Back when he read Superman issue 300, it showed the USA and the USSR rushing to claim the fallen Super Sun when he landed in neutral waters. Now, Mark Miller always wondered what it would be like if the other guys ended up getting to him first, an idea that subsequently earned Miller an Eisner Award nomination in 2004 for Best Limited Series, so you must check it out. Number 4. Superman Parallax. In Superman Volume 4, Issue 29, written by Keith Champagne, we see Superman on the search for missing children from Metropolis, but when Superman follows a lead, he's greeted from fear himself at an abandoned hospital. Parallax and Superman fight it out, but realizing he has no other choice, Superman offers himself up to the Dark Force. The only being that can save Earth at this point after is Sinestro, a powerful alternate, perhaps one of the scariest. You be the judge. Number 3. Lara Lane Kent Supergirl. This next version of Supes looks a lot like the version that we're going to get in the new Flash movie, so I had to throw her in there to get the gears spinning a bit. She's the daughter of Superman and Lois Lane. She appeared for the first time in Injustice Gods Among Us Year 3 storyline. Now, in Zack Snyder's Justice League, we learn that Lois Lane is indeed pregnant, and the following sequels would have shown us a world without Lois. So perhaps this Flash film will show us this bright alternate world where Batman has killed the Joker and Supergirl grows up with both of her parents' guidance. She looks pretty badass too. Now, these are just set photos, but the similarities are wild. To see for yourself, check out Injustice Year 3, starting with issue 6 or 7. I think she comes in around there. Number 2. Superboy Prime. This version of Superman has more powers and less weaknesses. I'm talking immunity to kryptonite and magic. He first appeared in DC Comics Presents issue 87, where Kal-El landed on Earth and was discovered by Jerry and Naomi Kent while they were on a hike in the New England seacoast town. They named him Clark, although Clark Kent was the name of a popular comic book hero, Superman. So yeah, he already existed on this Earth Prime. Now, Clark grew up and later attended a costume beach party, which I gotta say, tights plus sand, really? It's not the best idea, I don't know. They went to get a glimpse of Halley's Comet by the beach. It sounds great. Clark even dressed up like Superboy, although he was being teased. And then all of a sudden a tidal wave hits, a portal opens, and the Superman pops out from another dimension. Now at the same time, Clark's powers manifested and he quickly learned what to do with them in the moment. Superboy followed that Superman back into the portal to his reality. Unbeknownst to him though, he would never come back. That is until he decides to later punch reality apart. Number 1, Superman Prime. Superman of the 853rd century. He's literally a living extension of the sun at this point in time, so we gotta finish with him. He left Earth way back in the late 21st century once everybody he cared about passed away. Okay, he's like, oh, she's dead? Peace. What about the millions of others you could help? I don't know. There's other people. Meet other people. Go on Hinge. I don't know. He traveled beyond space and time after that, literally reaching heaven and hell, and he made his first appearance in DC 1 Million issue 4. So after soaking up the sun for 15,000 years straight, Superman obtained new abilities. He's more powerful than the gravitational pull of a collapsing star, and is many, many times faster than the speed of light. He's so powerful that he has some energy to spare. One of those new abilities is to share his power with others. A small amount, but still, that's far beyond any other metahuman at that point ever. You thought Superman was godlike before. This guy can literally smell you across the universe. And that's not even a joke. It's called superhuman olfaction. It's a real thing. He can smell trouble across black holes.
Number 10, Steel Corps from Age of X. Iron Man is now a household name thanks largely to the MCU. And the Iron Man film in 2008 that started it off. Believe it or not, before that he was not that well known in the mainstream. Don't let them rewrite history for you. Comic historians like to do that a lot. So does the media, especially right now. Still, within comics pre-MCU, Iron Man was decently utilized, but it definitely jumped up after that popularity. A lot of that was thanks to horizontal marketing. Anyway, on to Age of X, which came out in 2011. Here you had an intriguing version of Tony Stark who went by the name of Steel Corps. Why? Because he had ended up becoming permanently bonded to his Iron Man costume, which was also slowly digesting him. Metal indeed. Seeing the irony in becoming a walking corpse, that's how he decided upon his name. Also, his armor could operate without him, like it had its own directives and would just drag him along for the ride. Tony has a bad history with that happening with his armors. His AI is just too good. He's making them too good. Number 9, Clue. You ever have words you just can't say? No matter how many times you hear it, people will say it right to you, and 2 seconds later, it's gone, like dust in the wind. This is one of those for me. Same with Kara and Kara. This is a sad Hulk, an alter ego of the Hulk, not Bruce Banner. This character is described as the Hulk of Hulks. Cause paradoxically, sometimes nothing makes you madder than feeling sad. It is said that this is the Hulk's repressed rage that even he has to always keep in check and inside because he knows that it'll be very dangerous. However, during the Axis storyline event, this alter ego broke free. And because Axis was all about heroes having the alternate moralities, well, this character went on a rampage and was more dangerous than the Hulk ever had been. So you know that means they racked up quite the body count because the Hulk has killed hundreds. I don't care what Marvel says. We've seen the towns destroyed. This character has a more streamlined, doomsday-esque design. It's pretty cool. Number 8, Hawkeye from Old Man Logan. Why hello again, Old Man Logan. We meet again. Not for the last time, I'm sure. Hawkeye is a main character for a decent portion of this story. He fulfills the role of cool side character. This Hawkeye is blind but still able to see in a way that is reminiscent of the Daredevil. He also has a ponytail, and you know you feel cool if you're rocking a ponytail. Hawkeye managed to survive all those years in that supervillain controlled America. That is until he teamed up with Wolverine, aka Logan. Don't do it, it's a bad life choice. If you want a cool archery style road trip companion, then Old Man Hawkeye is for you. Number 7, Natasha Stark. Let's go over a blip of an alternate universe. One that is more cool if you are a Stony shipper than anything else. Stony being the pairing of Steve Rogers and Tony Stark. Let me explain. I know some of you are already clicking off, but it's fine because all parts of fandom are valid. This universe is a sweet nod to the boon and transformative fandom that happened after the Civil War comic arc of 2006. This arc dealt with the pro versus anti-registration sides of superheroing. This was after a disastrous superheroing event goes wrong featuring the New Warriors, which leaves many dead, including 60 children. This arc would decimate Tony and Steve's friendship, and before this they had been besties, and so some fans felt that it hadn't been the best executed and they weren't that happy with it. And so these fans took to fandom and fan fiction to create what are called fix-its. They wanted to make the universe like it was again, friends. But for many, this ended up ballooning into a ship, and it became one of the dominant pairings of the fandom until the MCU, and till the end of the line, until not. Nah. With all that established, let's talk about Natasha Stark from Earth 3490. This is a female Tony who averts civil war by marrying Steve. Oh yes, because their feelings tended that way already, and the only difference was that Tony was a woman in this universe. Okay, sure Jan, I see you. Again, this was a blip, but for many shippers, a ha! I knew it moment. Whenever a part of your fandom is acknowledged in a fun way, it's always a good day. Fandom positivity is pretty cool. Number 6, Dargo Couture. Do you like Conan? Do you like Kamandi? Well then get ready for the Thor of Earth 10280. He is the last champion of Midgard, and he is living the most metal life, fighting Loki, who in this universe is a techno-sorcerer, which, I mean, how cool does that sound? Now he was a character who became Thor by wielding the hammer, which has happened multiple times throughout Thor's history. People become new Thors. Not that I would call myself that if my name was Dargo Couture. Is that a Farscape nod? Probably not, but I like to pretend it is because I make my own fun and connections. This costume is great. The spikes and somehow the extension of the wings on the helmet make them cool. He looks like he's heading a heavy metal band. Number 5, Super Soldier. When it comes to amalgam universes and characters, you've got choices, but we're gonna go with the original, the classic that fused characters from DC and Marvel together, and the imprint was actually called Amalgam Comics. They made a little one for a year to publish these. This happened after a series of lead-up versus fights. The characters would find themselves smooshed together. One of these fusions was Super Soldier, the combination of Superman and Captain America. The name's a bit on the nose, what's he gonna do? This character debuted in 1996. Again, as I said in my Batman crossovers vid, the 90s loved a good crossover. So here in this universe, the Super Soldier serum was derived from DNA taken from a dead alien, because why not? What else are you gonna do with a dead alien? They gave this formula along with solar radiation to a young Clark Kent, who then developed abilities because of it and became a super soldier. So there's not much Steve Rogers in the name, but there's some in the backstory. Not all fusions are seamless. It's an odd world when you fuse better years later with Doctor Strange. But this fusion is iconic, and it's a symbol of more cordial times between the American Big Two. Number 4, Mainframe from the MC2. The MC2 is a fondly remembered alternate universe wherein the boom of superheroes happened 15 years before it actually did in the Marvel 616 universe. So kind of like creating a golden age for Marvel so that they could have legacy characters, because that's what this comic focused on, the next generation of characters, something that DC already specialized in at that time. You see how companies feel about legacy characters is always changing and shifting. Sometimes they're great and sometimes they're awful. Mainframe is the MC2 version of Vision. He is an android patterned off the brain patterns of Memory Stark. So he has the backstory of Ultron and Age of Avengers. Mainframe is able to manifest in Iron Man's armor and hop from suit to suit, and also to satellite. He tried to make himself the de facto leader of the Avengers right out the gate. The Avengers at first were not aware that he was an AI, but when they found out, they actually still remained his friend and helped him out with all the stuff that he needed, because being nice to AIs means that they don't go crazy and take over the world. Life lesson. Number 3, Capwolf. Yes, I'm serious, Capwolf. Capwolf is a bit of a joke. In fact, the arc that he first debuts in is meant to be a slight tongue-in-cheek reference parody of an other story arc that was going on, but that fell flat, not only for modern readers, but for readers at the time. In fact, it had to be explained, and that's never a good sign. Capwolf is what it sounds like. Captain America as a werewolf. And as silly as it is, it's also awesome. And it would be reused years later whenever they need to do like a creature feature. We need Frankencastle, we need Capwolf, we need somebody to be a vampire. We got choices. Something about a wolf parading around in Cap's costume with his shield is just, it's fun. It's a fun time. Especially if you just want to go with it. So if you like just going with it, this alternate version may be for you. Number 2, Weapon Hex. Here we meet another fusion character, this one from Warp World, which we've talked about many times on this channel, but if you're new here, here are the cliff notes. Gamora, wielding the Infinity Gauntlet, took the souls from the Marvel Universe, put them inside the Soul Gem, and then folded it in half so that all of those souls were then fused together. This created a fusion of X-23, Laura Kinney, and the Scarlet Witch, Wanda Maximoff. Here we're looking at a baby being born through experimentation to be the ultimate weapon, but this time instead of it being through science, we're looking at it being through magic and the occult, which of course means there was also some prophecy involved. The result? A really cool fusion, where you've got hex lines all over her body, etc. Think that arc in Teen Titans, the animated series from 2003, where she had like the markings. It's a cool look. And it works surprisingly well as a backstory combo too. See? Magic and science. Thor was right. We found a world where they're one and the same. And number 1, Black Widow from the MCU. We're going to talk about Black Widow for our number 1, but really some would substitute many of the other characters in the MCU for this spot. The Marvel Cinematic Universe has become so large at this point that it just has its own fans and its own continuity that can operate, and for some does operate, entirely independently of comic canon, which is both a good and a bad thing, just like all things. For some, it made the characters more accessible and relatable. This is due to many's preference for a purely visual medium, because comics is also partially visual but also textural. There's, you know, layers. Black Widow emerged for some as a fan favorite. This was because they felt she was fully fleshed out, integral, and had many stories to tell. Some felt that she was underused, as was her potential in this universe. For some, the combination of medium and portrayal made her cooler than the original comic book version. As always, mileage varies, and some will prefer the MCU, some will prefer the comics, and some will enjoy both, or not like both. Different strokes. Number 10, Bloodstorm. Now, Storm is already mistress of the elements, so quite powerful and quite interesting. But what happens when she becomes a vampire? Now, this has happened briefly in main continuity, but in the Mutant X universe, it became a permanent change. The Mutant X comic series was published from 1998 to 2001, and as mentioned, it saw a very different Storm. This was after she was bitten by Dracula. Here, she was not saved, but instead became a full-fledged creature of the night. She of course had vows not to kill, so she had the vampire dilemma, which she solved by hiring some of her former teammates to let her drink from them, like Kitty Pryde. She would eventually leave the X-Men and join a team called the Six. She also turns Gambit into a vampire, even though she warns him he'll regret it, and he does. Spoilers. Listen when people warn you. Bloodstorm became a breakout character of this series. Number 9, New Sun Gambit. Speaking of Gambit, let's take a look at one of his alternate versions. This is New Sun Gambit, and he hails from Earth 9921. Gambit actually has enormous power potential that was quashed by Mr. Sinister in the main continuity, but that continuity is not all. In this other universe, he was trained to use his abilities even before he had them, and then when this was combined with his full potential and a mystic ceremony, ceremony, he became something else altogether. The only thing is, the awakening of all these abilities would create a shockwave that would destroy his Earth, forcing him to travel around, and of course he ended up on the 616 Earth, where he ended up befriending Gambit and trying to help him along his way, but didn't tell him who he was. It was after his reveal and Gambit's subsequent disgust that he changed his name to New Sun. Some fans like seeing the full unleashed potential on display of Gambit. Number 8, Basilisk. Not all alternate versions that people like have happy outcomes. Case in point, Basilisk from Earth 11326, an Earth also known as Age of X. Here, Cyclops was incarcerated in a mutants-only facility after the manifestation of his powers as a teenager killed several people, including his parents. He captured the attention of the prison warden Arcade because of his power set, so he made him this very special mask. It looks a lot like the Skull mask from Persona 5, and it's something that people like about this character. In fact, for many, it's what makes him cooler. It is a very menacing-looking mask. Now, a lot of this universe had to do with Legion, one of its personalities, and manifesting another world. So for some, it was just a cool concept in general. The mask looked great. Loved the mask. Number 7, Soldier Supreme. Here we have an amalgamated character from Warp World. This was the universe that was created when Gamora had the Infinity Gauntlet, put everybody's souls into the Soul Gem, and then folded that universe in half. As a result of this, the characters were merged and fused together. So you have Marvel characters smushed, and one of those was Captain America, Steve Rogers, and Doctor Strange, Stephen Strange. So I mean, they kind of already had the same name, just spelled differently, so it made it a bit easier. Back there, Dr. Stephen Rogers, but now with a PH. Their stories actually don't fuse too badly. It's World War II, and Stephen Rogers is contracted for a super secret soldier experiment, only it turns out it's a cover for a mystical ceremony instead of for, you know, the scientific one that he actually undergoes. But these mystic rituals still end up enhancing his strength and allowing him to connect with the occult, and he becomes Soldier Supreme. So he has Cap's cowl, but he still has like a mustache. And he was actually one of the heroes who objected to Warp World being completely destroyed at the end of the arc by Adam Warlock. So Warlock found a way to let it still exist and let these characters still exist. It was one of those loopholes. Stephen Rogers did that and kept being a hero. Number 6, Old Man Logan. Would any of our nerd lists be complete without mentioning Old Man Logan? Yes they would, but it just keeps coming up. It's a staple here on Top 10 Nerd. Well, this story is one of the most popular alternate universe stories out there, and it has a famously gross confrontation between the Hulk and Wolverine, or Logan, because he's not Wolverine anymore in this story. Here we have a grizzled old man Logan fighting his way across a supervillain-controlled America, trying to keep his claws sheathed after what he did, which, spoilers, was somehow managing to kill most of the X-Men. This was because he fell for an illusion created by Mysterio. This is a must-read for many fans and a fave Wolverine story for others. Number 5, X-Apes. The X-Men are monkeys, or rather apes. This, funnily enough, spawned off of the Marvel Zombies universe and event. Basically, they're trying anything. That event was just so popular. This did not turn out to be quite the hit that was, but I mean, few things can. But this universe still has its fans. Actually, everybody in this universe are apes or monkeys or animals of some kind. So really, if you enjoy this concept, it's just the whole universe, and you have people like the Ape Avengers and Dr. Octopus. It's made for a certain type of pun-loving individual. It's a bit niche, but for some it sparks joy. Number 4, Witchbreed. For this, we have to go for Neil Gaiman of Sandman fame's 1602 Marvel Comics contribution. It is also an alternate universe story. In this universe, the Marvel universe is all happening by Elizabethan times, 1602. There, mutants exist, but they are known as Witchbreed. This is because they are thought to be the spawn of demons or witches. Or both. They are creatures to be hunted down, but they find safe haven in Xavier's Select College for Sons of Gentlefolk, a school that causes great concern for Sir Nicholas Fury because he sees the potential of all these students as soldiers, which, let's not lie, that's part of what Xavier is doing. Again, this is a universe where people tend to like the whole thing, but the X-Men stand out as a distinct part, or rather, the Witchbreed. Number 3, X-Babies. Versions of your favorite characters as babies or kids. This is a concept that is either really fun or incredibly lame, depending upon who you're talking to. So the X-Babies are clones created by Mojo in the Mojoverse. This was probably inspired by an even earlier story where he had just taken the X-Men and turned them into kids, again for entertainment. Because you know, if anything goes on long enough, be it show, series, whatever, you're gonna get two things. You're gonna get a child episode, and you're gonna get a musical episode. Now, the X-Babies are a concept that is short-lived, but they are usually returned to. There is even an A-Babies versus X-Babies. Again, how cool you'll find these tots depends upon your tolerance for baby-related shenanigans. Number 2, Earth X. The version of the X-Men here are depressing, but all of Earth X is depressing actually. After an experiment of Reed Richards goes wrong, or seemingly that's what happened, for once it's not Reed's fault, I know, shock and awe, a population of superpowered beings is produced all over the Earth, and the world drastically alters. To quote The Incredibles, when everyone's super, no one is. Suddenly there's not as much of a reason to hate and fear the X-Men, and they've largely fallen apart. The one character people tend to remember the most that sticks out when they first think of this is Wolverine, who's got a beer gut and is married to Jean Grey, except it's not Jean, it's Madeline Pryor, but he keeps calling her Jean, and it's just sad. Now, how exactly is this cooler, you may be asking? Well, it's all in the depiction. It's unique, it's memorable, and part of a well-received work. So for many, that's what makes it cool. And finally, in at number 1, Vampire Wolverine. Wolverine, Lord of the Vampires. If you thought people loved Vampire Storm, then you know that they enjoy Vampire Wolverine. Wolverine has been a vampire more than once. You have what-if stories like the aforementioned Wolverine, Lord of the Vampires. But you also have arcs like Curse of the Mutants, which would also be the arc that left Jubilee as a vampire for a bit. Many have fond memories of the what-if story, where upon successfully turning Storm, Dracula then turns all the rest of the X-Men. Only because of Wolverine's healing factor, he figures out how to use his powers way faster than everybody else, and so he dethrones Dracula and takes over as leader of the vampires. In fact, he leads the new vampire X-Men to take over New York. It's up to the bizarre combination of Doctor Strange and the Punisher to take him down.
Number 10, Vampire Batman. We'll start on a Twilight note here, okay? Bruce Wayne of Earth 43 appeared in the 1992 Batman and Dracula Red Rain story written by Doug Munch with pencils by Kelly Jones. So after a group of victims met their fate in the same way with their, throats slashed and not looking great, Batman realized that he's got vampires to now deal with. Vampires led, of course, by the one and only Dracula. So Batman really goes the extra mile to get the job done here because he meets a rogue vampire named Tanya and opts to get bit. He's like, right here please, thank you. He turns himself into a vampire in order to fight Dracula. Awesome, sold. Debit, thank you. Okay, so now Batman lures these rogue vampires into the Batcave, detonates an explosion, completely dusting Wayne Manor, so now all this sunlight hits the bloodsuckers, poof, they perish, and Batman used his new wings, his actual bat wings, and then flew to fight Dracula. Bat Bruce won the fight by impaling Dracula on a broken electrical pole. Bruce wasn't looking good also. He lost a lot of blood, so he actually died, but the Batman will live forever as now a vampire, so that's good. That's a positive ending, I think. Number 9, The Batman Who Laughs. Coming from the dark multiverse, first appearing in Dark Days The Casting, created by Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo, comes a twisted Earth 22 version of Batman, The Batman Who Laughs. Sounds like a good time, it's actually a nightmare. The Joker here is cruel. He goes on a spree throughout Gotham, just chaos, pure chaos. He took out Jim Gordon, and then he poisoned Batman. So once Batman was able to move his body again post-poison problem, he broke the Joker's neck. But even so, the Joker was prepared for this. After the snap, he let this toxin out that infected anybody near him. So Batman now got infected. Cut to 2 days later, Batman and Superman are talking about what just happened. Then when Superman tells Bruce that a kid infected by Joker venom bit a doctor, Bruce Wayne laughs. He lets out a little laugh, but he catches himself after, and even Superman is thrown off. He's like, okay, something's not right here. So a day later, Bruce called the team to the Batcave, and he went full Omni-Man. He took out the entire team before anybody really caught on to this new personality. Weird and evil. This list is dark already. Number 8, Time Stream Batman. Batman: The Return of Bruce Wayne is a 6-parter written by Grant Morrison, released in 2010, and we pick up from Final Crisis issue 6 when Darkseid shot Bruce into the past. He travels throughout history, these fun, crazy eras, until eventually he's back to present-day Gotham City. Now the series is 6 issues, so we get 6 different types of Batman. This is like a 6-in-1 point. It's pretty juicy. So issue 1 gives us a caveman-style Bruce Wayne. He meets an immortal caveman as well, who becomes Vandal Savage. Issue 2, Bruce has to deal with witches. Okay. Issue 3, Batman is front and center in the high seas. Pirate Batman going head to head, of course, with Pirate Blackbeard. Enough said. Issue 4, we move to the Wild Wild West, where Bruce is a talented gunfighter, yet still he doesn't like guns and chooses not to kill. Vandal Savage returns here, but this time with the help of one Jonah Hex. Lovely. Issue 5, we find Bruce in what appears to be the 1930s, right after his parents actually died. So Bruce is taken to the hospital to recover from a gunshot from the previous Tale Out of Time, and that's when he meets a woman named Marcia. Marcia believed that Thomas Wayne actually killed his wife and then faked his own death. She was a friend of Martha's, so she was trying to get some peace of mind, trying to get to the bottom of this. So Bruce followed her to a graveyard without her knowing, and then that's when we find out she's actually a member of the Black Glove organization, and she intended on sacrificing Bruce to Barbados. She wanted immortality all along. Don't we all? Issue 6 ties everything together nicely, so if you haven't read it yet and this is piquing your interest, go check it out for yourself. Finish it off. It's a good time. And if you're enjoying this list as well so far, don't forget to share the love and hit that thumbs up. You guys rock. Thank you so much. Now back to some weird Batman alternates. Number 7, Darkclaw. Coming from the Amalgam universe where DC and Marvel combined powers, figuratively and literally, we get a Wolverine Batman double feature. First appearing in Legends of the Darkclaw issue 1 back in 1996, at just age 5, young Logan Wayne witnessed the death of his parents. So we have that Batman origin story sprinkled in to lay the foundation. Good stuff, promising stuff right there. And then Logan Wayne was then sent to live with his uncle in Canada. But after poachers ambushed his home, we have even more family members biting the bullet. So far, so sad. Afterwards, Logan Wayne enlisted in the Royal Canadian Air Force and soon after the Weapon X program. That's where the Wolverine origins really start to come in. Logan Wayne got the adamantium treatment, but it was deemed a failure in a way because Logan wasn't a mindless brute. He kept his sanity. So now we're starting to get a little bit more positive. This is good, right on. Afterwards, he was a free man. He studied criminology, forensics, martial arts, gymnastics, and all 127 major styles of combat. That mixed with the claws. Good game, dude. Good game. Number 6, Bat-Zaro. Making his first full appearance in Superman Batman issue 20, the world's worst detective and just a straight up villain, Bat-Zaro is the opposite of Batman. Morals, speech, combat, body weight, everything is opposite. So when you have a superhero like Batman who doesn't kill, tries to save the day, and solves crimes, the opposite is bound to be pretty brutal. Bat-Zaro had not one, but 2 pistols that he loved shooting around, and a chain, of course, to whack people with. And he had an upside down bat symbol to remind folks who's who. You know, in case the grinning sharp teeth wasn't enough. He idolizes Bruce Wayne though, funny enough. It's pretty weird because the origins of Bat-Zaro go way back to the Joker. See, Joker created Bat-Zaro simply because he wanted to officially kill a Batman. But when plans went south, Joker tried to fire a bullet into the Batman and Bat-Zaro jumped in the way, sacrificing his life for Batman's. Is this tragic? Yes. Is it a weird one? Absolutely. Number 5, Red Death. Coming from the dark multiverse on Earth 52, Dark Days the Casting, issue 1, we meet a Bruce Wayne with the same origins that we're used to. Now he eventually became a hero, yada yada yada, and he fought alongside Robin, and then the next Robin, and then the next Robin. His life was taking a harder toll on him. He was watching all these sidekicks bite the bullet, so now he was desperate to find a new power, a new way to prevent his partners from maybe, I don't know, dying. So he looked at his world's Flash, and he saw his super speed and thought to himself, you know what? I could use that Speed Force better than him. What a statement right there. So he took out every Flash villain himself, kept their advanced weapons, and then used those weapons to fight the Flash. He drove them both into the Speed Force with the Batmobile and the Cosmic Treadmill, and then he absorbed all of Barry's super speed. Now after Batman came back from said Speed Force trip, he referred to himself as Batman the Red Death, where he would then brutally kill Gotham's criminals in the blink of an eye. But here's the kicker, here's the bad part. Gets worse rather. Barry still lived inside his mind. He would beg Batman, or sorry, Red Death, to stop the killing. Imagine hearing somebody in your head. I mean, that alone is a nightmare. Number 4, Civil War Batman. Batman teaming up with Abe Lincoln. Yep, let's go. Batman the Blue, the Gray, and the Bat was released in 1993 from Elliot S. Maggin and Alan Weiss. When you need to protect the government's massive stash o' gold, who else do you call but the Caped Crusader and his horse appropriately named Apocalypse? This is a fun story because this era is just too wild to be boring. But in this Elseworld story, Abe Lincoln knows that Bruce Wayne is Batman. But it's Abe Lincoln, he can keep a secret or 2 or 3. Bruce had a bat fly in his window the night Abe's messenger arrived, so so he took it as a sign and made an epic old-timey batsuit. He's accompanied by Robin, but in here he's named Redbird, and then we find out that old-timey Bruce is actually behind the whole operation this entire time. You lied to Abe Lincoln for gold? Shame. Shame. You're already rich in some universes. You don't need gold. Or maybe he's rich because he stole that gold. Number 3, Bat Baby. Making his first steps in Batman issue 147, the 600th time Batman appeared in comics, we see Bruce Wayne as a baby. So after Nails Finney and his gang made a shrink ray, they set their sights on Batman and it worked like a charm. It was only a shrink ray though. He didn't de-age mentally, which is even better almost. So now he had the same strength and aggression as a full-grown man in a toddler's body. This sounds like the worst case scenario, but Batman was kind of okay with it. He worked with what he got. He's like, okay, people are gonna treat me as a baby, I'm just gonna dress like a baby. And then he wore a bat suit that no baby has ever worn ever. Classic Batman. Number 2, Holy Batman. Batman Holy Terror was an Elseworlds one-shot released in 1991, written by Alan Brennert. We find Reverend Bruce Wayne. How holy and fun is this? It's 1658, and in this universe, Lord Oliver Cromwell recovered from that fever and he maintained his hold on England. Later in the 20th century, Thomas Wayne, physician to ye old Gotham Town's council, was killed, same with his wife. Now James Gordon is on the case trying to get to the bottom of it, but he believes this was more than just a mugging. So he befriended young Bruce Wayne to maybe try and find some more info. Cut to 20 years later, Gordon is now Gotham Town's High Inquisitor, and Bruce is about to become a priest, and that's when Gordon finally tells Bruce the truth about his parents. He reveals that a man named Joseph Chill was behind the whole thing. The government took down one of their own. How peculiar. Priest in the sheets and Bat Freak in the streets. That's how we like it. And finally, coming in at number 1, The Bat. Batman Castle of the Bat was released in 1994, written by Jack C. Harris with pencils by Bo Hampton. We're really leaning into the literal bat theme on this list. I kinda love it, not gonna lie. Taking place in South Germany 1819, we get a scene similar to that in The Dark Knight. A masked highwayman robs a carriage. The passenger asks the man if he's ever heard tales of the demon who protects the land, and the highwayman scoffs, says, oh, that's just superstitious, I don't believe in that, and then a bat monster comes in and rips his head off. Dr. Bruce Wayne hears about this attack, and at his home, his castle rather, he tells his hunchback servant Alfredo, that the beast had attacked once again. What beast? What is he talking about? So when Bruce was a kid, his parents were killed in a carriage on a road. So Bruce and Alfredo found Thomas Wayne's brain, collected some body parts, added some electricity, and voila, now Thomas Wayne is back. And he looks like shit. Once bat fluid is added, he becomes a living nightmare of a monster, and his first plan was of course to get revenge on the same guy who killed him decades earlier. We saved the weirdest for last, that's for sure.
And at number 10, Mutant X Storm. Mutant X Storm is a mutant vampire. She goes by the name Bloodstorm. Classic. After being captured by Dracula, who wanted her as one of his brides, Storm is turned into a vampire. She gets her revenge though, aiding the X-Men in defeating Dracula, although she felt it was only right for her to leave the team now that she was infected with vampirism. Vampirism? Vampirism. And you know, bloodlust and what have you. Kinda would be problematic if you're trying to work on a team and you just keep trying to bite your peers. Imagine that wouldn't go over well. Later on, she would cross paths with Gambit, who pleaded with her to turn him into a vampire. So she agreed and she sired him, something that he would later resent her for in the long run. Moving on to number 9, Dark Claw. Dark Claw is the amalgamation of Batman and Wolverine from the Amalgam universe. So why is he scary and not just like totally freaking awesome? Well, just look at him. Debuting back in 1966, this character was a meta-mutant detective whose origin story is a combination between the two iconic characters' own beginnings. Logan Wayne witnessed his parents' murders as a child. When he grew up, he would join the Air Force and eventually was transferred to the Weapon X program. This is where he gains his Wolverine abilities, his adamantium-laced skeleton, and a supercharged increase in strength. Deemed a failure by those conducting the Weapon X program, he ended up going back home to New Gotham City and became Dark Claw, roaming the streets as a vigilante fighting crime. And at number 8, Storm Phoenix. Coming at you from What If Volume 2 Issue 79, this alternate version of Storm is a version that had the power of the Phoenix rather than Jean Grey. The Phoenix Force possesses her after a mission in space with the X-Men. When she comes back to Earth, she ends up creating a worldwide organization to protect the environment. Seems noble, right? But you know, she takes it a little too far. Instead of it just being a regular altruistic organization, Storm openly harms those opposed to her ideals, suspending them in animation up in the Earth's atmosphere, which you gotta admit is actually kind of a funny way to, you know, be like, you to somebody, suspend you up in the air. She ends up freezing an entire community after they violate an anti-hunting agreement. Eventually Storm Phoenix is defeated thanks to Kitty Pryde phasing into her original body, but all in all things could have escalated to much darker territory if she hadn't been stopped when she was. Moving on to number 7, the Red Queen. This alternate version of Jean Grey hails from Earth 9575. An alternate reality that's first seen in X-Men issue 5 from 1995. This Jean has been depowered thanks to previous crimes she's committed, and it's a little unclear as to whether or not she had access to the Phoenix Force in the past. Now, having been banished from her own Earth, Earth 998, she decides to reinvent herself by pretending to be a reincarnated version of Queen Madeline Pryor, her clone. From here, she embarks on a quest to become the Queen of Britain and eventually conquer the rest of the planet, and she had a plan to do it and restore her powers by finding various different iterations of Nate Grey from across the multiverse. She would essentially lure them onto her Earth, use them, drain them of their abilities until they died, and then, just grab another one and use him. Eventually she tries this trick on the 616 Nate Grey, who ends up breaking free from her powers, which results in her draining all of the life force of the other Nate Greys in an attempt to defeat the 616 Nate. But eventually Nate creates a sun around her and burns her alive. And fun fact, later on in the 616 continuity, Madeline Pryor would actually begin using the alias of Red Queen. Funny enough. She's like, I'm inspired. Moving on to number 6, Age of Apocalypse Colossus. Colossus of Earth 295 from the Age of Apocalypse Earth is not only frightening, but absolutely tragic. During the Age of Apocalypse event, he was forced out of retirement for a second time. The first was after he was so severely injured that he couldn't transform back into his human form, and was only kept together by Magneto's metal manipulation. The second time though that he came out of retirement was thanks to him needing to go on a very important mission to combat Apocalypse for Magneto. He and his wife Shadowcat led a team of mutants to save Colossus' sister, Illyana, who was the only mutant left alive with reality-traveling powers. In the process of rescuing her, he and Shadowcat abandoned their team, leaving them for dead. When he later learned that the reality that Magneto was trying to save with her powers and his plan was one in which Illyana was dead, he went berserk, going on a rampage that caused the deaths of several mutants, including his own wife. He was eventually killed by Gambit as a last resort in trying to control the mutant. And at number 5, Brute from Mutant X. Beast has had a handful of scary alternate versions, but this one looks like he crawled right out of a creature feature. Here we have Hank McCoy of Earth 1298, the Mutant X Earth, who is known as Brute rather than Beast. Brute came to be thanks to a series of deadly experiments that he conducted on himself that not only changed him into this aquatic-esque being, which allowed him to breathe underwater, but also reduced his intelligence down to the level of a child in kindergarten. He is later further mutated, gaining hooves for feet. While he may not have his smarts anymore, the character does have a berserker streak, which when unleashed can be fatal for anyone in his way, especially considering his mental temperament. He's a bit of a tragic character as well. He was falsely accused of the murders of Green Goblin and Ben Reilly, and was executed for it. And at number 4, New Sun Gambit. From Earth 9921, we have this insanely powerful and terrifying version of Gambit known as New Sun. New Sun has control of kinetic energy on a molecular level. This means he can turn any object's potential energy into kinetic energy, which in turn makes it explosive. And it's a power without much limitations. He doesn't need to make physical contact with an object to do so, and can even do it to living beings, including humans. His total kinetic control can also stop motion, and he can simulate other kinds of energy with it, manipulating whatever kinetic energy is present in order to simulate energies like infrared energy, all by molecular agitation. In addition to that, dude can transform himself into an energy wave, which allows him to travel through space and into other dimensions. Plus, he's also killed his reality's Phoenix, which is no easy feat. He dies in Gambit Volume 3, Issue 23 when he's impaled and then explodes, which also causes his world to explode in the process. And at number 3, X-Men Forever Storm. The X-Men Forever Storm is also known as Perfect Storm and resides on Earth 161. She's a clone of the original Storm who was created in order to restore the powers of heroes who are trapped on Genosha. But the clone became unstable, rapidly aged, and during an incident with the Shadow King absorbed the darker, less friendly aspects of his personality, to say the least. She ended up becoming malevolent and ambushed the X-Men team during a mission. She would then kill Wolverine and betray the team entirely, fleeing to Wakanda to seek out T'Challa's protection. T'Challa, who had previously been in a relationship with the regular Storm, believed that she was good, and saw that she was making an effort to help the people of Wakanda, changing the weather, helping the innocent, you name it. But eventually, after the two got married, Storm betrayed him too, letting Killmonger into their quarters, who killed the rest of the royal family and T'Challa, all so she could rule Wakanda. Moving on to number 2, the Age of X Cyclops. This Cyclops hails from Earth 11326, an Earth in which anti-mutant propaganda is on the rise, and anti-mutant protests eventually lead to the decimation of mutants by the US government. As you can imagine, Cyclops did not fare well in this socio-political climate. Scott operated under the name Basilisk, and after being captured by the government, his eyelids were removed in order to prevent him from having any sort of control over his optic blasts. He was then forced to wear a mask by the prison he was kept in, and was used by Alcatraz as a mutant executioner. Kinda dark. He eventually managed to escape and managed to save some of the other mutants in the process too, but he's forever haunted by the guilt of what he was forced to do, and the lives of innocent mutants that he ended. And finally, in at number 1, the Ruins Charles Xavier. I feel like anytime Professor X has an alternate that's evil, that particular Earth suffers big time because of it. This version of Charles Xavier comes from 1995's Ruins, one of the most depressing and dark alternate reality stories in the Marvel multiverse. Taking place on Earth 9591, this Charles was elected president of the US rather than creating the X-Men. He ends up becoming corrupted and set out on a political crusade against mutants, despite having Warren Worthington III as one of his security staff, although Warren kept his mutations a secret in general. Xavier creates a prison in Texas for mutants, in which mutants are deformed, experimented on, or tortured as a means of controlling their mutations, something that he states is done for their own good. Yeah, super dark. Starting us off in at number 10, Super Soldier. We're starting off our list with a number that would be an awesome addition to the Avengers roster, but would feasibly never manage to even be considered for the team in the regular 616 universe. That's because he's an amalgamation of Steve Rogers and Superman. This is Super Soldier, a product of the combined DC Marvel Amalgam universe in which various characters from each publisher were merged together to create new individuals. It's a neat concept, and it gave us a lot of interesting characters. Naturally, it makes sense that Captain America and Superman would make a great match for each other, with the hero gaining his abilities thanks to the Super Soldier formula, which was created thanks to cellular samples from an alien corpse. Little less of an inspiring superhero origin story, isn't it? He can do everything that Cap and Supes can do, so needless to say, that's impressive. But damned if DC would ever let him join a 616 Avengers team. Up next, number 9, Hawkeye 2099. A 2099 version of Hawkeye appeared in Secret Wars, and he's really dope. So 2099 is a Marvel Comics imprint that initially began being published in 1992 as one possible future in the Marvel Universe. It's meant to take place 100 years in the future, and was initially titled Marvel 2093, which clearly was a little less catchy. Anyway, this Hawkeye shows up in Secret Wars 2019 issue 1 from 2015 as part of Alchemex's Avengers team. Named Max, last name never revealed, he differs from the traditional iterations of Hawkeye by having his DNA mixed with a hawk's, which gave him real claws and real wings. In our number 8 spot, we have Natasha Stark. Here we have an alternate version of Iron Man hailing from Earth 3490, and it's a unique one. This Iron Man is actually Iron Woman, born Natasha Stark rather than Tony. She's exactly like Tony in the sense of having the same abilities as the 616 Stark and an almost identical suit of armor, except it's referred to as her Iron Woman armor, of course. Here's where things get really interesting though. Because this alternate version of Stark is a woman, Civil War never happened. Instead, Natasha gets involved with Captain America Steve Rogers, the two marry, and the Civil War event never occurs on Earth 3490. Apparently, they were a deterrent to each other's more aggressive behavior. Natasha first appeared in Dark Reign Fantastic Four issue 2 in 2009 when Reed Richards was in search of alternate realities in which Civil War had ended differently. Moving on to our number 7 spot, we have Ant-Man Wolverine. Yes, this exists. Secret Wars gave us a slew of alternates of various characters, and this includes a version of Ant-Man who is Wolverine. Or rather, a version of Wolverine who operates under the Ant-Man mantle. First appearing in Secret Wars Battle World issue 3, this little Logan has the same powers as those who have operated under the Ant-Man mantle. And tiny claws to boot! How fun. This Ant-Man Wolverine was one of many alternate versions of Wolverine who were brought together in an attempt to fight a pacifist version of Wolverine, aka Monk, by Mojo. Now these other Wolverines involve another alias of Hank Pym's, Giant Man, who, as you guessed it, was a Wolverine who could also grow in size. There was also a cat Wolverine and a dog Wolverine, but kinda less credible than the rest of the other alternate Wolverines, just saying. And at number 6, Janet Van Dyne of Earth 1610. This version of the Wasp is from the Ultimate Universe of Earth 1610. While her fate is a pretty brutal one, and her relationship with Hank Pym is textbook domestic abuse, she possesses something that Van Dyne of 616 does not, the ability to actually transform into a wasp-human hybrid. Born a mutant, her mutation gave her insect-like traits that also expanded to her behavior. She could lay eggs and eat insects, which yes is kind of gross, but the benefits at least outweigh the downsides. When she would reduce in size via the force of her willpower, she would grow a pair of insect-like wings from her back. She retained her normal strength when reducing in size and could control the exact proportions of that size, although her body contained a natural neurological reflex that prevented her from shrinking below a specific size, so can't get too small. And she also has an ability called bioelectrical blasts, in which she produces energy that she calls her wasp stings. She could use these blasts when at full size, which was essentially the equivalent of being struck by a lightning bolt. Moving on to number 5, Iron Maniac from Earth 5012. Okay, sure, we are looking at an Iron Man here who is technically a little off his rocker. Anthony Stark of Earth 5012, who calls himself Iron Maniac due to him believing that he is, I quote, the sole survivor of a sane world living in a backwards insane world, is from an alternate timeline where most Avengers members had been slain by the alien Titanus. During this period, Reed Richards became power hungry and turned his back on the remaining heroes, and Stark ended up being scarred by an attack from the Human Torch. Essentially, he turns into a Victor Von Doom-esque character, setting up his base in Latveria in order to take over the world and save it from Richards. Compared to the original Tony, his body contains additional cybernetic enhancements, and he has developed a technology called power dampeners, which, in his timeline, he uses to counteract the Fantastic Four's powers. Nifty. Moving on to number 4, Weapon Hex. Weapon Hex is the product of the Infinity War storyline in which multiple characters were merged together. More on that later. Weapon Hex is an amalgamation of Scarlet Witch and X-23, aka Laura Kinney, Wolverine's cloned daughter of sorts. Her origin story is an amalgamation of both characters' origins, with the result being a character who has the reality warping abilities of Wanda Maximoff and the adamantium skeleton and claws of Laura Kinney. Essentially, she is Scarlet Witch with a defensive and melee upgrade, mixed with a dose of X-23's inherent trauma from being the literal creation of an experiment. Regardless though, she's pretty kick-ass. And at number 3, Storm Thor, from Earth 904. That rhymes. This alternate version of Thor is one in which Storm becomes the goddess of thunder. This occurred in an issue of Marvel's hypothetical series What If in Volume 2, Issue 12 from 1990, within a story titled What If the X-Men Had Stayed in Asgard. The story follows an instance in which the X-Men and New Mutants found themselves in Asgard, if the title didn't give that away already, with some of the mutants returning to Earth and others staying put. This led to a new age of X-Men on our home planet and a bunch of different X-Men members, the likes of Rogue, Nightcrawler, Mirage, Sunspot, and Cypher adopting an Asgardian way of life. Storm ended up becoming the new god of thunder due to Thor being trapped in the form of a Midgard frog. When Hela and Karnilla conspired to steal Storm's soul, Storm bested them, and Thor was released because of it. Thor renounced the throne, opting to go live on Earth instead, and gave it to Storm, who became the Queen of Asgard, since Odin had died. She also had her own hammer to wield called the Stormbringer. And hey, having a kick-ass version of Storm replace Thor in the Avengers? I mean, count us in, that's pretty cool. Moving on to number 2, Maestro Hulk. Hailing from the dystopian future of Earth 9200, Maestro Hulk is an alternate version of the Hulk who is a horrible tyrant. He first appeared in the 1992 story The Incredible Hulk Future Imperfect issue 1. Now, despite him being literally insane and a complete obsessive sadist, he is a version of the Hulk who is a more experienced and stronger version than the regular 616 Hulk. The 616 one was ultimately able to best Maestro, and thus implying that Maestro's demise was actually the catalyst event that created the Hulk in the first place. There's a whole time displacement thing that happened. That being said, let's play a game of hypotheticals here, as if we weren't already in this list. If Maestro was actually a good guy instead, he would be a massive asset to the Avengers team. He's got all the benefits of being the Hulk, the super strength, speed, stamina, durability, the regenerative healing factor, capable of absorbing and resisting radiation, resistance to mind control, all that fun stuff, while maintaining his genius level intellect in this form. And he's immortal. He's like an upgraded, although still kind of mad version of the Hulk, and hey, that's pretty cool. And last but not least, in our number 1 spot, Soldier Supreme. Soldier Supreme is one of the more recently created alternates on our list. He is an amalgamation of Captain America and Doctor Strange, a product of that Infinity War storyline. Now that storyline involves Gamora using the Infinity Gems to fold reality in half and create something called Warp World. This merged many characters into one, with Steve Rogers and Stephen Strange becoming Steven Rogers. Their origin stories were merged, their powers were merged, and so were their aesthetics. This results in a version of Captain America who can do all of the things that Doctor Strange can do. In other words, Cap got a serious upgrade. Imagine having a Captain America who is basically a Sorcerer Supreme, or I guess Soldier Supreme, on the Avengers. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
And at 10, Black Flash. The embodiment of death for all speedsters, Black Flash is the Grim Reaper of the Speed Force. Making his first appearance in The Flash Volume 2, number 138 in 1998, he was seen before the deaths of several speedsters including Barry Allen, Johnny Quick, and Bart Allen. He also tried to return Wally West to the Speed Force, however was unsuccessful, taking Linda Park instead, Wally's girlfriend, which I have to admit is a pretty big bummer. Since he was unsuccessful the first time, Black Flash then returned to try to claim Wally again, freezing time for everyone without a connection to the Speed Force. But thanks to the combined efforts of multiple speedsters including Jesse Quick, Jay Garrick, and Max Mercury, Wally was able to race Black Flash to the end of time, causing death to have no meaning, defeating the zombie speedster instantly. I mean, I know he's not a zombie, but he looks like one. But that wouldn't stop the Speed Force, since later Barry Allen returned in the Flash Rebirth storyline, becoming the new Black Flash, until Professor Zoom took the title after his corpse was raised in the Darkest Night storyline. Before we move on to number 9 though, if you could do me a huge favor and hit those like and subscribe buttons, that would be amazing. It really helps us out against the eternal struggle of the algorithm and lets us know what you want to see more of. Thanks. Now, let's continue. And at 9, the Black Racer. However, Black Flash was not the first embodiment of death that speedsters had to deal with. Being introduced in New Gods number 3 in 1971, Sergeant William Walker became a servant to Darkseid after being paralyzed during the Vietnam War. But while sharing the same concept, the thing that makes these two speedster death gods different is their abilities. While yes, both are speedsters, the Black Racer possesses the unique power to merge with a host, corrupting that person and enhancing their abilities. He did this with Bart Allen and used that to kill Darkseid during the Darkseid War storyline when the Anti-Monitor had taken control of the Black Racer. Black Racer also kills Darkseid in Final Crisis in place of Barry Allen and Wally West. This was pre-Flashpoint though. Plus, his costume just looks pretty badass if you ask me. This is the kind of evil speedster that you should cosplay. Damn, that would be cool. And at 8, Johnny Quick. Johnny Quick of Earth 3 is an evil version of the Flash who's a member of the Crime Syndicate, basically the Justice League, but evil. Same people, but different alignment. Jonathan Allen was once a high-profile criminal, but got cornered on the roof of Star Labs. While on the roof, Jonathan got struck by lightning, which also shattered the roof. John and his girlfriend fell through that roof, with John landing in a load of chemicals which ended up granting him his super speed. And his girlfriend, Rhonda, ended up gaining powers similar to that of the Atom. Looking at images of this guy, you can tell that he's nuts. Like, he looks like if the Green Goblin became a speedster. Like if Norman got the Carnage symbiote and then got super speed, this is what that would look like. Absolutely bonkers. However, when fighting against the Injustice League of Earth Prime, Johnny underestimated Captain Cold. See, he had managed to disarm Cold, but the gun was also voice activated, which allowed Snart to remotely freeze Johnny's leg and then kick it, shattering it. Johnny tried to crawl away, but was killed thanks to Alexander Luthor stealing his powers and then getting his neck snapped. That's gonna leave a mark. And at 7, Kingdom Come Flash. Wally West from Earth 22 is weird to me since it feels so backwards, everything does. In the Kingdom Come universe of Earth 22, Wally West received his speed through unknown means, but nonetheless he still became the Flash. And when Superman retired, Wally kept going, but he kept going and never stopped, running from scene to scene, disaster to disaster, never taking a break. Before this, however, he ended up having a daughter, who got her speed genetically and became Kid Flash. However, this is where it gets weird to me. His children were named Iris West and Barry West, and it sets me on edge because like they're supposed to be older than him and then Wally is supposed to inherit the Flash mantle. It's weird. Not to mention that this time Barry and Iris are actual biological siblings, which only makes all the memes about the Arrowverse even worse at this point. But considering Wanda and Pietro from the Ultimate Universe, it's nothing new for comics. Gotta love them Game of Thrones-esque love stories, am I right? Okay, well in this universe the kids don't actually end up dating, but you know what I mean. And at 6, Savitar. Yes. As a fan of the Arrowverse, I felt the need to include one of the most interesting evil speedsters on the show. Savitar, while sharing the name with another evil speedster from the comics, actually is revealed to be a time remnant of Barry Allen in the show, being more of a future Flash than Savitar. Honestly, he's a combination of both. His story though is very confusing, in essence making himself a paradox. In the post-Flashpoint Arrowverse timeline, Savitar comes back from the future to kill Iris West before her and Barry get married. This causes Barry to create as many time remnants as possible, which is basically a clone of himself, in order to stop him. But Savitar kills all of them except one. The one he spares then gets shunned by the rest of Team Flash Flash for not being the real Barry Allen, even though he's still technically the real Barry. It's weird. So in an act of fury, the Time Remnant runs back in time, creating a new identity for himself as the first speedster and the god of speed known as Savitar, and then somehow gets his face badly burned. I feel like I need to return him to Papa John's. When he fails at killing Iris, however, he tries to scatter himself across time to become immortal, but is stopped by Team Flash and is shot in the back by Iris, which lets the paradox catch up. Season 3 was weird, man. It's nothing compared to Season 7, though. Halfway through into number 5, Bizarro Flash. When Bizarro 3 found himself infused with radiation from a blue sun, he got the power to replicate himself as well as create other Bizarro life forms based upon the likeness of people from Earth, which is gonna have a ton of legal repercussions, but whatever. He uses this power to create a cube-shaped Minecraft-like Earth he calls Bizarro World. One of the inhabitants he creates for it is Bizarro Flash. The post-crisis Bizarro Flash is morbidly obese and is super slow, which is just ridiculous. But for some reason, he can also fly at the speed of light, apparently, which also doesn't make any sense, but hey, it's comic books, what are you gonna do? Some versions of this Bizarro can still run fast, but get winded easily, so they don't pose much of a threat. Certainly not against the likes of someone like Kingdom Come Flash, who never stops running. This version of Bizarro Flash also has a line of mustard for a logo instead of a lightning bolt, although I do have an odd craving for hot dogs now. And at 4, Leah Nelson. Leah Nelson from Earth 9 is a very different version of the Flash, to say the least. On her Earth, Leah is the second most recognized person on the planet. She was an instant celebrity since her parents were the first people to visit Jupiter, her mother was a bit of a hero herself, and her father was a Nightwing agent, even if he wasn't very good at it. But Leah is a being of light, and once able to control this power, she took on the moniker of the Flash. Since she is a being of light, Leah is also able to travel at the speed of light, basically making her a speedster without having a connection to the Speed Force, which I admit may frustrate some of you with her being on this list, but I thought it was interesting and is certainly a weird version of the Flash. Leah also has a whole host of powers, including superhuman speed, metamorphosis, where she uses light to create solid holograms and alter her appearance, energy construct creation, allowing her to make solid objects out of light, energy projection, which is just beams of energy, and energy absorption, which in essence makes her immune to any form of light, including lasers. Just think of energy as lightning and then boom, even more flashlight. Getting close to the end into number 3, Hot Pursuit. What is the Flash known for? Running really fast, right? Running so fast that he can actually end up beating instantaneous teleportation. So what's the deal with this Flash? Being first introduced in The Flash Volume 3 number 6, Hot Pursuit is a version of Barry Allen from another universe who came to warn his counterpart about an impending disaster, which ends up being Flashpoint. The difference? This Flash doesn't run. Instead, he has a Speed Force powered motorcycle called the Cosmic Motorcycle. Yeah, his cowl is a motorcycle helmet and his suit is in black and white. This version of Barry Allen doesn't seem to have a physical connection to the Speed Force, only being able to access it through his motorcycle. Unfortunately though, Hot Pursuit dies 6 issues later in The Flash Volume 3 number 12 as a part of the Road to Flashpoint event. The moniker of Hot Pursuit would later be adopted by Patty Spivot after she stole his gear from the Central City Police Department. Penultimately into number 2, Speed Demon. I remember a while ago I mentioned an amalgam universe that combined DC and Marvel characters, and I mentioned the Iron Lantern, a combination of Hal Jordan and Tony Stark. Well, today I present you Speed Demon, a combination of Barry Allen and Johnny Blaze. Blaze Allen was a circus daredevil who sold his soul to become the first Speed Demon. The demon component of Etrigan was formerly Jay Garrick before the Night Spectre stole Jay's soul. The Night Spectre approached Blaze and asked him to serve him in his attempts to collect souls of the most pure and the most corrupt. Blaze Allen refused. So in an attempt to persuade him, at his wedding, Night Spectre stole Iris's soul. Blaze then accepted the bond, hoping to get Iris back, or at least to ensure her safety. Speed Demon speaks only in rhymes, but is a speedster with a flaming skull head that can also breathe hellfire, which is pretty dope. Wally West, which is an amalgam of Wally West and Danny Ketch, was the next Speed Demon, who accepted the power in order to help his uncle get Iris back, because he still didn't get her back after he accepted the power. Finally, coming in at number 1, the Crash. Oh my god. Coming from Earth C-, this Crash is the fastest animal alive, and a member of the Just a Lot of Animals group, which is this world's Justice League. On Earth C, everyone is some form of animal, and it's probably the most ridiculous thing that you could ever read. While his real name is unknown, the Crash is this universe's Flash. And not only that, but he's actually a turtle. The classic tortoise in the hare scenario. Slow and steady wins the race to get super speed and a connection to the Speed Force apparently. And I'm not even kidding, he fights against characters with names like the Weather Weasel instead of the Weather Wizard. That's hilarious. I love it so much. The Crash was first introduced in Captain Carrot and His Amazing Zoo Crew number 14, which also features super superheroes like Wonder Wabbit, that's actually how it's said, Aquaduck, Batmouse, and apparently not a Batman who is literally a bat for some reason, the Green Lambkin, and not the Green Lantern, and my personal favorite, the Green Sparrow, along with a load of other ridiculous names like The Item. I suggest you go check these out if you're looking for a laugh because oh my god, this had me cackling. It's great.
And at number 10, Angel of Earth 311. This version of Angel, known as Werner, appears on Earth 311, the Marvel 1602 universe in which all of the Marvel characters exist in the year 1602. Mutants are referred to as witch breed, and the Catholic Church considers them to be devil worshippers, hunting them down. Generally, if a witch breed could pass as a human, the Inquisitor Enrique, the alternate of Magneto on this Earth, would let them survive, with the intention of having them join his Brotherhood of those who will inherit the Earth. That is actually the name of his brotherhood. Werner had special garments that his mother had made him that hid his wings, but eventually he was found out and fled. The Inquisition, though, threatened that if he did not return, they would kill his mother. So he obeyed, yet they killed her anyway. He was tied up in chains, set to be burned at the stake. That's where the frightful part of his story ends, luckily, with him eventually being rescued and saved from death by the equivalents of Jean Grey, Cyclops, and Iceman. Speaking of Cyclops though, in at number 9, Cyclops of Earth 200524. This version of Cyclops is gross rather than scary. Hailing from Earth 200524 from the comics, this Cyclops has an eye infection, and the results ain't pretty to say the least. That's pretty much his whole shtick. The comics are parody comics. Like what, but like what? They're parody comics, written in a similar vein as the What If stories, except with a much more comedic spin. Earth 200524 appears in the very first issue of Volume 1 of What and features the likes of stories titled What If the Avengers All Had Beards? What if DC let us do Batman Daredevil as a crossover? And what if Black Panther were actually white? Yeah, I think you guys probably get the vibe of what they were going for. Moving on to number 8, Robert Drake of Earth 51518. This version of Bobby Iceman Drake comes from the remnants of the Age of Apocalypse reality, remnants which were salvaged by God Emperor Doom and made into a part of his battle world. It's referred to as the domain of Apocalypse. Now, Iceman has a gruesome reality. Appearing in Old Man Logan issue 2 back in 2015, this Iceman encountered one of Apocalypse's horsemen, Sabretooth, in the Savage Land, and then was seemingly killed by another horseman, Holocaust, who erupted into atomic fire which engulfed the land and Robert. While his teammates were dead, it was revealed that poor Bobby Drake survived, having become a form of pure moisture, which would then evaporate and reconsolidate into a rainstorm that then poured over the X-Men as they fought Apocalypse. Talk about a jarring existence. He's also a much cruder looking version of the character than we're normally used to. And at 7, Ruins Kitty Pryde. Ruins is one of the most depressing series in the Marvel multiverse. It's tragic as hell, and most of our favorite characters have suffered from terrible fates in this timeline. Ruins takes place on Earth 9591, a place in which all mutants had horrible side effects with their powers. We actually mentioned the version of Professor X on our last part. He became the US president who would then hold mutants in a Texan prison, ordering for them to be experimented on and disfigured for their own good. Kitty Pryde is one of those mutants. She's imprisoned and, in an attempt to escape, uses her phasing powers, but that does not go as planned. Instead, when she's phasing, she gets stuck halfway through a door, causing her to lose 3 feet of her intestines in the process. We never see her die on panel, but it's assumed that, losing a whole 3 out of the 20 feet of intestines that one has inside their body surely wouldn't have the greatest of side effects. There's some science facts for you. We have 20 feet of intestines inside of our bodies. And at number 6, Helverine. Helverine is actually a character who appears on Earth 616. He comes to be after Wolverine's soul was dragged to hell and an unnamed demon decides to take over his body. His whole mission is to ruin everything Wolverine likes in his life, including people. Helverine starts his crusade by going after a pastor that Wolverine had just met prior, covering the pastor's body with insects and stabbing him through the chest, then going over to his church, spraying acid all over it and burning it to the ground while the congregation was inside. Yeah, dark, huh? Luckily, he doesn't get very far when he encounters X-23, who manages to defeat him. Despite that, Helverine goes after the X-Men and almost murders Colossus. He's captured by Mystique, and a ritual is performed to bring Wolverine's soul back to his body. Once Wolverine has returned, he and Helverine duke it out inside of his body, and eventually Jean Grey is able to force the demon out and back to hell. And at 5, Ultimates Nightcrawler. The Ultimates universe, aka Earth 1610, is filled with a whole lot of fascinating but often meaner versions of beloved Marvel characters. Nightcrawler Kurt Wagner definitely falls into that category. Kurt grew up in the Bavarian mountains but was kidnapped for the Weapon X program in his early formative years. He was forced into becoming a mutant agent for them. Once free of the program, he joined up with the X-Men and was generally well liked until, well, Pete turned out to be a total dick. After he befriended Colossus, the metal mutant came out to him telling Kurt that he was gay. Turns out the Ultimates version of Kurt is a bit of a homophobe and was disgusted by Colossus, telling him that he was dead to him. He eventually grew very lonely and then kidnapped his crush, Dazzler, who at the time was dating Angel, all as a scheme to manipulate her to love him instead. The X-Men had to go after him to rescue Dazzler, and Xavier had to put Kurt into a coma in order to rehabilitate him. And at number 4, The Fallen from Earth 1298. We've got another alternate of Warren Worthington III on our list, this time from the Mutant X reality. Now on this Earth, Warren has a very different transformation into one of Apocalypse's horsemen. Rather than being Archangel, he became something referred to as the Fallen. No longer did he have his angelic wings. Instead, his skin became incredibly pale, and his wings became bat-like, and he was able to breathe fire. Warren, thanks to this transformation, becomes completely conflicted, eventually giving into all of his dark urges, turning against his allies and becoming completely cruel and merciless. It even got to the point that no one trusted him anymore, friend or foe. Moving on to number 3, Charles Xavier from Earth 20329. This Xavier comes from an Earth that's referred to as the steampunk god world, in which the world is ruled by mutant gods. Which seems pretty neat, until this Charles Xavier comes along and he's totally evil and then takes mental control over all of the mutant gods. Xavier wasn't satisfied with the gods who ruled over them, so he began to manipulate Storm. He made the gods slaughter millions of innocent people and cause natural disasters like droughts, which made the people of Earth rise up and fight against them, including the version of this Earth's Magneto named Magnus. Together, Xavier and Magnus created the secret island of Utopia, a haven of science and technology for mortals. At some point he reveals the truth, freeing the gods from his control, but later would be killed by Magnus because of it. And at number 2, Nazi X-Men. Here we have an Earth, Earth 597, in which the X-Men are Nazis, all thanks to the Nazis winning World War II. They subsequently took over the world. The X-Men here are called the Reichmen, and consist of Banshee, Storm, Havoc, Psylocke, and Rogue. It is an Earth that appears in Excalibur Weird War 3, Volume 1, Issue 1 from 1990, where the Nazi universe begins to slip into the 616 universe. The Excalibur team end up having to fight against them, along with Herr Xavier, a German version of Professor X who resembles Joseph Mengele, one of the real-life Nazi scientists who was known for his cruel experiments on Jewish prisoners in Holocaust camps. Xavier creates mutants through horrible genetic experiments, including the Reichmen, so fits the bill. And finally, in at number 1, Sublime Beast. This version of Hank McCoy comes from Earth 15104, and he's a drug addict, among other things. From the mind of Grant Morrison, this alternate reality is from the writer's Here Comes Tomorrow story arc, in which we get to see a glimpse of a future timeline version of the X-Men. It's a post-apocalyptic world in which Scott Summers has abandoned his role as the leader of the X-Men, leaving Hank to take over, who ends up creating an army of cloned Nightcrawlers in order to take over the world. Hank's having some major trouble keeping things together, and he became incredibly stressed out, so he starts using a drug for mutants called Kick. Being vulnerable, he becomes the new host for Sublime, and wages a war against humanity. That's where the Nightcrawler clones come in. They're called the Crawlers. And in the process, he ends up completely destroying the Xavier Institute. 150 years later, he's still at it, wanting to completely wipe out other species that were not mutants. He manages to find the Phoenix Egg, and resurrects Jean Grey, aka Phoenix, who, seeing him as Beast rather than Sublime, acts as his minion, exterminating races in his name. He takes some of her DNA and duplicates her powers for himself, which then prompts Jean to remember who she is and purge Sublime from Hank's body.